you're probably wondering what I'm doing right now, and I'm looking for Chris because I can't find him in the thing. Hold on. There we go. I'll
If you
just
go
move
to
it over here.
Panelist, you
Yeah,
can
I'm gonna go
search
to. Hold
for him.
on. I'm just doing the search. It just for some reason I couldn't ID it today. All right, hold on. All right. What happened was is Chris it randomly threw Chris somewhere else after someone left, and suddenly I couldn't find him. All right, here we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. We're just getting started here. Now, if you probably jumping on here and you're wondering why are some people on stage and why are some people in attendees? So some people are panelists and some people are attendees. The folks that are panelists get here early. So basically, we basically have people come in. People start coming in about 6, and they're chit chatting and we're just kind of getting to hang out and talk about all kinds of random things. And then about 6:50, we lock the room. So usually we're not adding more people to the panel after that. We're doing little mic checks and working things out, and then we kind of close up the room there. So if you are interested in being in the panel, you're more than welcome to. Anybody's welcome. Just come in, make sure your audio and video are good. Raise your hand, your little digital hand in the attendees, and we will bring you in. But again, we open the doors at 6 and then start this at 7. There are, if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see we start talking at 6. We usually have some kind of more vertical discussion or something that's more specific at 8. And then we just stream from 7 to 8. So that's if you're here, welcome. But know that there's some other hours on either side. And if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see the link, and some of our friends here will post that link as well. So just keep in mind following that along as you go. If you are coming into the panelists, make sure to put your city, state, country into the thing. You can see most people have their locations that are added there. Also, if you have questions, basically remember if you are a attendee, you want to use the Q&A. So down below, you'll see a little Q&A. You'll see some questions already starting there. You can get in early and add those questions. You can also vote on questions there. So if you're an attendee, add questions there. If you're a panelist, just raise your digital hand to ask questions and talk. And it's really an open conversation. So you're more than welcome to ask whatever questions may come up for you. Reminder that we have a couple things going on today. We're going to talk about education. This is just the beginning of an education conversation today. This isn't the big talk of education. I don't know when that's going to be, but it's probably in a couple weeks. So we're thinking about having kind of a 2, 3, 4 hour discussion about education and process in a couple weeks on a Saturday afternoon. But right now, what we want to do is just kind of start the conversation, start talking about what the challenges are, and start thinking about that. So between 8 and 9, we're going to talk a little bit about education there. So stay tuned for that. Also, just remember on Saturday, we usually have, tomorrow we have kind of a long day. So we start at 6, like every other day. 7 to 9, so we have a slightly longer time where we're talking and just discussing comments and questions and process. And then at 9 o'clock, I want to be talking about compositing for the Blackmagic ATEM switchers and just how they work. A little bit of green screen, a little bit of graphics. We're going to talk about how that process actually works there. We have Final Cut Pro Secrets with Steve Bays, which were amazing last week, and he's going to continue that this week. So stay tuned for that. We're gonna at 11 o'clock. We're gonna be working with Oliver Breidenbach from Boinks, and they make Memo Live. Now Oliver has been kind enough to provide everybody with access in this group to Memo Live, and so I'm gonna post the link in the chat. And so that is the link you can download. Tomorrow is the last day. You'll be able to sign up for Memo Live. So if you want to try it, you got to download it or you got to apply there. This is tomorrow's the last day for that, and then we're going to close it up. But we're going to keep on meeting over the next couple of weeks and kind of working together. It's an experiment in kind of working together on how to work on how to learn some kind of app together. Then finally at noon, we're going to talk about photogrammetry. So photogrammetry is taking pictures, turn them into models, and in this case, we want to put them on a phone. So we're going to be working in Metashape for the next couple weeks, and then we'll probably add other apps that we're working in. And so we're going to be, talking about how to take photos, talking about how to turn them into 3D models, talking about how to turn them into what's called USDZ, and then how to get them onto an iPhone in this case, but you could get them onto a lot of different mobile devices. So, so we're going to be talking about that. So Saturday is a pretty busy day. Sunday is mostly a day we kind of figure some stuff out. The couple notes that on Sunday we'll talk a little bit about the two things that we'll talk about in addition to whatever else we end up talking about is the Discord server is up thanks to Phil and Steven and Ryan, and we've had some discussions about it, and Phil was kind enough to put up get the Discord kind of started up there. So we're gonna show it to everybody. We're gonna discuss it and talk about signing up for Discord if people want to have that discussion. Also, there's the skeleton of a website that's going up, and we'll talk about that on Sunday as well. So that's what's going to happen on Sunday.
Not to just Ryan did the lion's share of the work last night, so I want to make sure we're
Perfect.
Sharing the love there.
Phil, Ryan, thank you very much as far as working through that. Ryan and and also Stephen for doing the research and helping with getting it off the ground there. So so that's coming next week. We'll have signups for you. We're going to do it kind of slowly as we start to work on it to make sure we get it right. And then finally, if you want to share this, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to put the link into the don't share the one that you have. That's your personal connect. The one that's in Zoom that is up in the eye is your personal connection, and it'll cause some issues on here. But I put the link that you can share with friends if you want to invite them to this group. It's open to everybody. So if you think that this is useful for you, then tell your friends. And if you don't, then definitely don't. so that's all I have to say. So anyway, if you like it, go ahead and share it with your friends, and we'll keep on seeing whether this is something that grows past quarantine. But right now we're doing it every day until we are freed and allowed to go back into the world. Anyway, so there we go. Let's get started here.
Have you got a count on how many days that is? 20, 25, something like that? It's a lot.
I don't know. Has it been that long? Have we done that many? 25 of them? I keep on thinking. I think for the last 2 weeks I've just said it's been 2 weeks. Like I'm like we've been doing this for 2 weeks.
No,
I can't believe we've done 20. And I've been very obsessed with the idea of not missing a day. So when I have production, I've been moving it into the evenings and moving it around. I'm like, I can't miss the day. I have to, and Grant has been the same way. And Grant, you got to get us in Australia. So it's been
on March 25th.
Okay, there we go. So we're nearing our nearing our month.
That would be a month.
Yeah, there we go. So that's pretty amazing. So we've been doing this for quite a while. Let me see here. There we go. So someone said that there was a Rode. There's some. Michael Tucker said Rode put out a series of product videos today, which are worth chatting about. What's new from Rode? Is there anything new from Rode? I didn't see any product videos. I thought it was new products when I read it. So we'll look at the product videos and we'll come back to that. We'll talk about that there. I'm going to test the Rode Go little transmitters because I think they could be really useful. And I think I talked about this earlier that my brother got them and he's got like the little Samson 10T mic with the Rode Goes, and I was like, this sounds great. So I'm going to give that I'm testing those soon. So we'll see how that goes.
I really like the Rode products. I've been using them for a few years now. I've got a bit of an assortment, and they're really nice product. They're well built and well priced as well. So
I think that the only Rode product that I have the Rode NT2s. The NT2s are something that we used a lot of those shotgun mics. We did find that there were a couple of them that after some time would get noisy, that we had to, and a couple of them got noisy after a while, but outside of that, they're not a Sennheiser 416, but they're 90% of a Sennheiser for 25% of the price. so that was kind of our how we made that decision there. Brian? What did you think of the Rodes? I mean, you were on the tail end of those NT2s a lot.
I mean, I think it's a great mic for the value. I mean, the only reason I'm not using a Rode and I'm using a Shure VP82 is because I had it like laying around. But if I was like going out to buy a shotgun right now, that's probably what I'd buy is like a Rode or yeah, that's probably the one I'd buy because it's a great like cross between good value and
Yeah.
and good performance.
And that's kind of generally Rode, right? It's great price performance, value. It's not that they're not trying to knock it out of the park. They're just doing a really good job and giving you a great value to make that work.
Yeah, well, and I really like their on camera solutions too for like DSLRs for like doing film shooting
And I have
that stuff.
I have the little phone one that you like plug into the phone, and it's a little directional mic. And I found like having to do quick voiceovers and stuff like that. That's been super effective.
Yeah, little first person YouTube videos and stuff. Yeah, they work really well.
Yeah, I've been
heard a
using
lot of-
the on camera micro one they have for quick interview, just using a DSLR. And it's pretty good, way better than the camera itself, that's for sure. And and the NTG one in the field has a backup audio just to make sure I've got something mounted on our cameras. Cheap solution, works really quick. So I mean, there's other companies that make good product, but it's kind of nice to have a company you can go to and kind of know that it's going to come out good. So and good price. That's important for me. So.
Well, and one thing that I will underline is how important it is to have two audio sources, even when you're doing interviews. I think you have a lot of people who end up with mic problems because they had, the lav went bad or the whatever. And I don't think there's almost any time when I ever do an interview where I don't have two. Now, a lot of times it's two shotguns. If someone's seated, I'll often try to use two shotguns. I don't like seeing lavs if I don't have to, so, and I don't find that most lavs don't sound very good, in my opinion. So it's kind of like, well, I'd rather just put a shotgun right out of frame. If that person's just going to be sitting there, I don't see any reason why to. When they have someone sitting that they interviewed and they have a lav, I'm like, that was just lazy.
Yeah.
Like,
if you're
in an environment, I will say, if you're in an environment where you can't put up the mics, then that's a different situation. But if you're going to do something, bring people in, you have a little C stand and drop it in over them. It's kind of
even for my teachers. That's what we're doing right now for the teachers. We have a boom above them. I set them up in their places, and then they're set up. And so we've got a C stands with a boom for the mic, but we still have one on the camera, just in case, because who knows, the dog trips. It's pretty hard to trip a C stand, but anyway. Yeah.
And then the big thing that just as we talk about mics a little bit, that Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the time I'm shooting right at the sternum. Like that's where that's kind of where I point the mic. I think a lot of people point the mic at the mouth, but they're moving around and they lean forward and they do a bunch of other things. And so if you point just at the sternum, I think that you end up with you get a little more natural.
Yeah, no, I actually made a mistake. I was shooting I'm making little educational videos now, which is really hard. But I made the mistake of having my shotgun basically pointed right at the top of my head, which was perfect until I did this.
Yeah.
Right.
To write, because I had a little a little scribble thing I was doing, and my audio. I'm making audio videos. Audio educational videos with bad audio on them.
That's the worst.
That's a good
worst.
look. That works out really nicely. So I in fact, the shotgun I'm talking on right now is literally pointed exactly right here.
Right. No, that's perfect.
It's like I also hide them in, if there's a plant, or I'll put a plant or something on the table, and I'll have one sometimes on the table, just to pick up.
The hardest part with the table is if anyone touches it, you just really hear it.
They put their cup on there,
you
and
really
they
pick
got
it up.
destroyed. Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Alex Olegnowitz said, any idea why the Pocket Cinema camera will not output 4K on the HDMI? I don't
It's
know.
part of the spec. It simply says that it doesn't. It says it matches frame rate, and whatever the frame rate is, you get that at 1080 unless you say 720. Period.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of times I think that the answer is probably, hey, you paid $1,200 for the camera. Like, but I think that might be the part of the issue, is because by having it be something that you're switching back and forth, that's more circuits and things, or you're paying $2,000 for the camera. There's a lot to it, more than just you would think, than to be able to kind of switch back and forth in those areas. But
what about the cable? Could it be the cable? Because there are cables that won't carry 4K.
There are, and it might have been an attempt to keep things simple. I don't know. I mean, there's definitely cables that won't carry 4K. A lot of times it's the length of the cable. I mean, most cables that we find that are 3 feet or 6 feet. Well, the funny thing is that over time, what we found is the Apple branded cables. I know this is horrible, but the Apple
They
branded
work
cables
with
will do 4K.
everything.
They work with everything. Like they're more expensive. They're like $19.95 for a 6-foot cable. But I have so many of them because it was always like, if I just want it to work, I'm just going to get the Apple cable. Like and it wasn't. We tried cheap. I mean, I prefer monoprice on most of this kind of thing because it's just so cheap. And but we went through a lot of different cables, and we just found that if we just got the 6-foot Apple cables, it would always, every time you plugged it in, it would just signal would come out the other end if there was signal to get on the other end. So it's an interesting interesting problem here. Claudio Legiri said, please let me know if my let's see. Oh, there's too many things here that got popped up here. So does somebody have an idea of how to recover data inside a Drobo Mini while the chassis is broken, but my 4 discs are still alive?
You got to get another chassis.
No. Yeah,
Yep,
get another
chassis and run SpinRite. That's about it.
Yeah, and then return it.
Yeah, and that's definitely a call Drobo. Like they can help you with that. I've definitely had them help me with Drobo issues. I have a lot of different storage, but a lot of my kind of personal storage, I've got like 24 terabytes or something on kind of like just one version of my personal storage that is backed up, but it's on a Drobo and it's sitting on my desk, and it works well. But I've had a lot of Drobos, and so that would be, but that is, anytime something goes wrong with the Drobo, like the hardware, definitely call them, because if you start messing with it, you're gonna put it into a state that makes it harder for them to get it working. So definitely, but yeah, you'll end up getting another chassis. You'll end up putting them back in, and they'll work with you on getting it turned on.
My ex-wife got the Drobo, and it was fine with me.
As fine with you as her having it instead of you, or
No, just she.
Don't miss it.
Chris, oh good.
Hey Alex, is storage one of your topics coming up soon?
We should talk about storage. We'll put that on the list. Shannon, make sure to put that on the list, because we should definitely talk about storage. A lot of us deal with a lot of storage, and so
yeah,
how to process storage and how to keep all the stuff that we're creating, I think, is good. And we'll talk about a lot of goofy backup systems and so on and so forth, because one of the things that we say is, depending on who you talk to, within folks that I've worked with, it's either 2 or 3 copies need to be there before we consider it actually in existence. So it doesn't, the big thing that we used to say internally was like, it doesn't exist until it's in 2 places. It just doesn't exist. Don't even think that it's just floating around in the air, and it's not on the ground until it's in 2 places, and typically 2 places that aren't at the same, that
not in the same place.
Yeah,
Right. It's got to be
exactly.
the original and then 2 backups, and then it exists.
Yeah, absolutely. William.
3, 2, 1. 3
William
copies.
Nadlin. Go ahead.
3 copies, 2 versions, 1 offsite.
Yep.
2
And,
different formats.
Yeah, and I like to have it, for the stuff that's really important, I try to get it into the cloud, into some kind of cloud backup for 1 copy, and then you have 2 other physical copies that are not in the same geographic area, and you don't lose that much in that environment. Things that are important to you, all my favorite photos and my best videos and everything else are kind of really spread out there. I produce too much content to keep it all, but on the stuff that's important, I do that.
So what do you back up? Do you back up just the final, let's say final cut? You back up all the media, you back up everything. I back up everything. Like
I back up
massive.
everything. If it's a project, if it's a big project, if it's a project that's worth doing, then it's a project worth. Now we have a lot of clients, and our statement was generally, we'll keep your content for 30 days. Like that was the, like for 30 days, we'll keep your content. And then after that, we'll deliver it to you. 30 days after we deliver it to you is how long we'll keep the content. Now, the reality is that we kept the content a lot longer than that, because they come back 6 months later or a year later, like, hey, do you got that content? And, we might have formatted the drive, or we didn't think it was important or whatever. So we would keep it for a lot longer. And what we did is the easiest way to do this, we would just use raw drives. The cheapest way to just save lots and lots of data was that we have just raw internal drives, and those little sleds that you'd put them, or like what we call the toaster, and you drop them into the toaster. You put all your stuff onto it, and then we would name them with some kind of naming convention, and then we scan them. There's this program, I don't remember what it was, but it was like CD library or something. But we would scan all the drives.
CD Finder.
Yeah, I think a CD finder, but you scan the drive and then you put it into a little case and you put it on the wall. And the nice thing about that is that someone would ask you for it. And you go into CD finder, you do a search, and we could find almost anything made in the last 5 years in 15 minutes. And the big thing was
another one that's really good and fairly cheap is the Final Cut Library Manager. So once you've scanned the drive, it'll keep the name up in the list. And if you're looking for something, you do a search, it'll tell you where all the places it is. It won't name your, it actually works with my Google Drive as well. So it does work with some remote storage. Yeah, and you can open the file right from there as long as it's connected. It'll show you whether it's connected or not. And you just go, I use that. I use the 3 terabyte hard drives. Name them, and then
we have
this
hundreds
thing keeps
of, we have
track of where it
hundreds of
is.
drives, and we use a thing called Disk Catalog Maker, which works now in all with Catalina and everything. And we have a rule at our office, 5 edit suites, and I always tell clients, if you've seen an image on a screen in our office, I have it for you. Everything.
Yeah, I did go down that path, but I think that it got to a point where especially when we're doing live events. Well, what the problem is that you do a live event and you've got 8 cameras and you're recording ISOs and sometimes you're doing 4K. You're just generating an enormous amount of content, and it just gets to a point where you're never going to go back to it. Like we save the programs, but for a live corporate event that was announcing something, we're just kind of like
the cost of keeping it after a while. Surely the cost would not make sense.
Yeah, no,
well, it's like $2,000 in like footage review, and yeah, I can find it.
And part of it was just having someone that every once in a while turn the drives. You always have to have somebody there that's turning the drives every 6 months. You got to turn the spindle, now until we get completely to solid state.
I have a tip about that, and I've had this happen many times over the years. One of the main things that happens with a hard drive is what they call stiction, where the platter just won't spin when you first power it up. What I do with those drives, and we do the same thing with bare drives, Alex, is I take that drive, I turtle it, I turn it over, I put it on a nice big flat surface, and you spin it, just physically spin it on the table, and then grab it. And the inertia, I've done this many times, Mr. Menzies.
That is some black magic.
That's crazy. That's the craziest thing.
I've done it many times over the years. You stop it and it just goes, oh, hey, I'm supposed to spin. Put it back in the sled or the toaster. Fire it up.
That's the craziest thing
so
I've ever heard.
How do you know the angle of the data read-write head in which direction to spin it? Like, that doesn't even make sense.
You just lay it flat on the table just like it wants to live. You physically spin it like you're spinning a top, Inception. Grab it.
There you go. Okay.
Clockwise or anti-clockwise?
The problem is that
well, it depends on what.
Depends if you're in Australia or
what hemisphere you're in.
Grant spins it. Grant spins it counterclockwise, and up here we spin it clockwise. That's what we do.
You just have to have a disclaimer.
There's chaos. Now William Nadelum says, "Are we still doing?" Alex, you said sessions are going to become more topic focused and more specific as we go into the weekend. Does that mean we'll lose these precious morning pre-show chit-chats? No, we're always going to have the chit-chat. So just be clear, like we slowly get more and more specific. So 6 o'clock, if you get here at 6 a.m., you'll find that it's pretty wide open. Like we're just sitting there talking. I think this morning we were talking about bottle rockets. So it may not be as focused as 7 o'clock is. And so 7's more media focused, but still pretty open conversation. And we're just answering questions. Then at 8 o'clock, things get like, hey, we're going to talk about this subject. Today, we want to talk a little bit about the challenges around education. If you asked to put something in the Q&A, by the way, that's related to education, I'm keeping that for the second hour. But yeah, we're not, I was very careful to not, I don't want to lose the 7 to 8 hour because it's a fun time for all of us. So we'll keep on adding things, but we won't take anything away until we just can't sit in our chairs any longer and do this. We'll be here like we're here for 8 hours a day. We've stopped doing any work because just so we could talk about work. Elaine.
I have a question back to a couple of days ago. You talk about where you plug in your audio. So let's see if you have a camera that has a XLR in. So you plug through the camera. I'm talking more specifically to the ATEM Mini that's coming hopefully soon. The ATEM Mini, I look on the site, it has 2 jacks in the back for a microphone. Is it better to plug in my audio source in there or through the camera and back? Like, would there be latency on one or the other? or go through USB.
I don't think you
and-
have. I don't think latency is really the issue, but I do think that I would rather plug into the camera than the. I don't have a lot of confidence in that jack. In the
Yeah,
Mini.
when in doubt, embed. That's my
well,
rule.
Well, and the thing is that while I don't think that the preamps are very good that are in the cameras, what I will say, what trumps that is that 1/8 inch jack does not give me any confidence at all for an audio input. And so I was kind of bummed that the one thing that I really felt like we missed when we saw the Mini Pro is when we turned it around, I just wanted to see like a little TA3, just one TA3 or two TA3s would have made it Pro. Like, and now we're going to let you have real audio, and so I think that that didn't happen. And so I would rather put stuff into the camera than my tendency would be to put it into the camera XLRs before I put it into the switcher. I would use the switcher only as a last resort. Jim, you're using the A10
balanced
Mini, right?
audio, right?
I am using the A10 Mini.
Yeah, balanced audio.
But I'm going to camera, and I think I'm going to keep it that way. I wish they had also, maybe it is because it's Pro or not, but I wish on the A10 Mini Pro they also put an on-off switch, something recessed, because you have to actually plug it in order for it to go on. There's no on-off switch that I know of on here.
Yeah, I'll share. I'm using the A10.
A lot of
Mini as
switchers
well.
don't have.
Look at
on-off.
Yeah, no, I know, but but for this
like,
type
that's
of product, it'd be nice. I mean, I just unplug it.
When would you plug it in and not turn it on?
No, to just turn it off at the end of the day. Like when I'm doing this kind of stuff, I just like to reach over and just turn it off without unplugging it.
But none of the Blackmagic stuff has an off switch.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have
a lot of production gear doesn't have an off switch because they don't want to. It's another thing. It's another area that someone can forget.
It's another
and
point of
accidentally turn it off.
failure. So why would they do it?
A lot of the stuff, a lot of production, the production mentality is like, hey, when I plug it in, I want it to turn on. I don't want it, you know, and that's it does become a thing where someone, like, especially when you're building into a kit, you bump it and now you can't figure out why it's not powering up, and then you pull all the wires apart and then you see that someone pushed the off button if it's got one of those. And so I see what I do get what you're saying, though, is that for something that's desktop, it seems like it wants to be more of that. And so that I get where you're coming from. But
I get the other part too. It's not in a rack. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
is
that's it.
No, but you were gonna ask.
Is it PoE?
No,
I don't know.
Not. It's got a power adapter.
Yeah.
There's no power adapter.
Well, but like the panel the A10 panel is PoE as well as powered. So it's.
I can check it out. I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Cyprian says. Go ahead, Grant.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say, because you brought it up about power in a studio sort of environment. I just did something in my setup that I think has worked out pretty cool. I put in power strips everywhere. I put black power strips in, which are consistent, always on power. And then I put white power strips everywhere as well. And they are all plugged into Wi-Fi switches. And so anything that I plug in that I want to turn off when I walk out, I've just got my
that's
Echo.
so scary. Like that, just so you know, like that is so scary. Like the idea that I would have Wi-Fi controlling my power, that something could go wrong and all my power would go out while I was working is just the most. I don't even like when we get into like power strips. I don't even like power strips with switches on them. Like it's because it's just like someone's gonna bump it, or the switch goes bad, or it does things. So the idea that I would have it on wireless, that scares me. That scares me.
Okay, so Alex aside, Alex aside, anyone else think that that's really cool?
Well,
And
I
if
have
raise
just
hands,
like
it's
you,
cool,
dude.
right?
I do that all the time. And could
Same.
I do that? Because I've got an experiment I need to do, because I'm bringing Zoom back into Zoom. I want everybody to pin my video and see if we're getting any kind of tunneling, because I'm going to hide myself real quick. And I'm feeding everything through right now NDI. Everything that's coming to you is either a virtual cable or through NDI on the network, going through a box into a encoder. So I just wanted to see if it was showing up okay.
But now, is your setting HD on your Zoom preferences? You know how you can say enable HD?
Yeah, I don't know if I have it enabled on this particular run. No, it's because I just jumped into the feed. I didn't go check. How bad was it? That's what I wanted to know. How clear was the video?
It's pretty soft.
Pretty tough.
Yeah, it's probably only coming to you at 720 right now. So
There's a bunch of
or
images
at
that
best.
look like they
Say
might
even
be
less than
people.
720.
360.
Hey, Alex.
was it?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I needed
Yeah.
to know. Thank you.
Alex,
Yeah.
I think the other side for me is that, you know, I'm very much a camera person and a light person, and you know, we normally have on-off switches on those products.
Well, and
and
one of the things I do-
you don't want to you don't want to not have that on an HMI, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah, no,
cameras can
absolutely.
break.
Well,
Remember
and-
this? Yeah.
And one of the things I'm rewiring now that I've kind of got my system where I kind of want it, I'm rewiring it now so that I can walk in and just hit one switch and have all the lights come up. You know, like right now they're on a couple different places, and I was like, this is crazy, you know. So I'm going to put them all in one place where I just hit a button and everything comes up. You know, is the kind of the next step to that. But again, like even with my stuff, I know it's not energy efficient. I have a lot of solar panels, so I don't worry that much about electricity because I never get a bill. But my rack stays on because I'm just like, oh, I don't, you know, it's in a state that I like it. I probably should turn it off all the time, but I don't. Cyprin says a prep. Is there a prep for the photogrammetry talk, which we can do for homework? I'm hoping an iPhone app to start with. So we're going to talk about photogrammetry tomorrow. For those of you who are there or those of you who haven't done it yet, my recommendation is to download Metashape, Mac or PC. Just leave it in demo mode. Don't turn on the 30-day whatever, 30-day thing, because you don't, until you get good at it, there's no reason to activate it. So download Metashape. We're going to use a couple different apps, but we're starting with one. I don't want to try to learn 6 different apps all at the same time. So reality capture is coming down the path, but Metashape is what we're kind of focused on right now. Download it, take a bunch of photos and throw them in there of an object and see what happens. We talked a little bit about that technique last week, but we're going to do more of it this week. And so we're going to look at whether people have been successful, and so play with it, and we'll talk about what works and doesn't work in that process. Chris, you have, or not Chris, George, you have a comment or question?
Yes, so I want to step back a little bit to audio sync on the ATM Mini. So I am actually using the ATM Mini right now and a MixPre 3. So I've got my MixPre set to 12 milliseconds for delay.
How many milliseconds?
12.
12 is less than a frame.
Say again?
12 is less than a frame.
So I'm trying to see if my sync is off. So I guess I know
it's a little off. Your audio's a little ahead. I mean, I would turn it to like 60. But 12 is like, you want to think in frames in general. I mean, you can play with it a little bit, but if you know most the average person can't see that 12 milliseconds. But 30 is, or 60. That now you're jumping frames there. So what do you got now?
30. Said maxes out at 30. So that's what I was saying.
Go ahead, hold on.
When I tested it at 12, it looks like it was fine, but 30.
It looks a little behind right now to me. So 30 is like not very much delay. Is that it for the MixPre?
3.
That's it for the MixPre. Yeah, 30.
Interesting. Because I've been putting it into the switcher. I haven't really been dealing with that, so it's interesting.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
anyway,
Nate and I had a conversation yesterday about exactly that offline while we were here, and talking about how the MixPre only had 30 milliseconds, and which it's not really designed to do video audio syncing. It's really designed to do multiple microphone phase matching and timing alignment. I told him I was going to ping John and tell him that we needed to add a delay on the output of the MixPre.
Yeah, absolutely.
George, where are you putting the delay in?
It's on the MixPre.
Now, where in the MixPre, the left-right outputs?
The camera. This is the Ultra Studio, Micro Blackmagic Ultra Studio, the micro.
The micro. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Mickey, on the MixPre, you can only do it on the mics. You can only delay on the microphone. You can't delay the output.
Okay. Wait. Are you guys using the MixPre 3?
Yes.
Yes.
Gotcha. I have the 10 here, and I'm able to delay on the outputs, but I think these are the actual physical outputs, not the USB interface output.
Right. And yeah, I would take a look at that and see if that's the case there. But that's interesting. Beju, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, it was back to Metashape. Which version of Metashape should we get, the standard or the pro version? They're both different installers. So
For now, go ahead and get the pro version. There's no reason not to. You're not paying for it yet, so you might as well test the one that's got all the bells and whistles. I don't think that we're going to need any of the pro stuff. The pro stuff is really, I'd like to try to show you some of that. So the pro version, the primary thing we use in the pro version of Metashape is the targets. So you have these little targets that you can add to your objects, and when you take it, it syncs. It makes it easier for them to figure out where the cameras are. I don't think that there's any other major tool there that isn't in the standard version, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. But if you're going to download one, might as well download the pro one. Then you can decide whether you want to, whether you can do it, whether or not you can do without it later. Colin, you had a comment or question?
Oh, I was going to circle back around to power switches, and yeah, I get why you wouldn't want to power switch on individual AV boxes. But in the network engineering world, we do network managed PDUs all the time. That's a
oh yeah, but Wi-Fi.
Surprised it hasn't migrated into AV as everything is moved over IP.
Well, yeah, I just think that. Yeah, I'm even on the network PDUs that we've used in facilities. I've got a UPS downstream from it just because I don't trust the PDU. I'm just like, all I need is someone to turn off my PDU, and I'll have to.
Devices. Those are two very different devices. One will give you power when things fail, and the other one distributes power. That's
right. So no, but I put one downstream. I'm just saying there's just always like the PDU goes into that just because I'm just not sure that the idea that it's network controlled does make me nervous.
Well, the point here is that you have the ability then to program a turn on, turn off sequence. So if you power down your room, you don't get your router powering down before you get your other.
No,
device.
I understand why. It's just that and for most things that wouldn't end the world and end my everything I'm paid to do. If they made a mistake, I'm okay with that. Like I'm okay with setting up these processes of how it works when the risk is, so for me, when I think about risk, like my definition of risk is the chances of something going wrong multiplied by the result of it going wrong. So if the result is 1 million people aren't going to see the video and I'm never going to get to work with that client again, then the chances of it only have to be very minuscule, less than a percentage before I'm going to go, I don't want to do that anymore. So that's it can be this tiny little percentage. And because the chance, the result, the outcome is so high, you just have to make sure that you're clear of what that percentage is. So I know I sound risk adverse, but it's only because I'm worried about that process. Grant, you were going to say something?
Risk averse is good. The point that I was getting at was that you might want to consider something like that when you're shipping out a rack to a client, so you have remote access.
Right. That makes sense.
Anyway, that's
it. Grant.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think about how much would you pay to fix the problem that happens in the moment during a show.
Yeah.
If something happens, you would go, I would throw $1,000 at this right now to not have this problem. And so I try to think, ahead of that and go, I can put $500 in to make sure that is fixed. But my question.
But how many times have we had a project that just didn't work or something went horribly wrong? And we know that there was some point 2 days ago where we decided we didn't want to pay for that FedEx. Like, oh, I don't want to pay $14 for that FedEx. I'm going to send it on, or your event maybe doesn't unwrap, but something horrible happens, like where you just barely missed the wall. And you're just like, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I tried to save $14 and I, almost, slammed into the wall or did slam into the wall or I had to say I couldn't do something because I didn't have one more cable that I could have bought a week ago. That's the part that really, that's how pack rats are bred.
Also, one thing is
redundancy. Sorry.
One thing is Alex doesn't like barrel connectors. Get a longer cable, because that's a failure point.
I just want to say one little story about barrel connectors is I hate barrel connectors. I've only used barrels for a major output once, and that was in New York. And we had to go out, and the live view wouldn't work where we were. We were in the middle of the building, so we put it at the window and we ran it. It was kind of the last minute thing. We ran it. We put a barrel connector and we ran it all the way out. Well, the live view, when it doesn't get when it doesn't get an image, it just puts up the last image, right? It doesn't put up something else. It just shows the last image frozen. And we were sending a still, and some, crew that was there, putting the thing together, grabbed onto my, he asked me if he could have the program out or whatever. And I said, no, that's going to my live view. I don't have a splitter. You can't do that. So I leave. A little later, he unplugs my, right at where I'm set there, and he plugs it into his TV to take my signal, thinking that I won't notice that the fact that it went somewhere, it was going somewhere else. So when we go to start the show, there's no backup, because of that, and delays the whole show. And so if I use barrels, I've only, again, that's the only time. But now, even if I do any barrels, there's a lot of tape that goes on. Like, this has got to be part of the cable. But I generally am not a big barrel fan.
Are barrels in your crikey kit?
I do have barrels in my crikey kit. I have probably 10 of them that are there. I just but I don't use
They're just
them.
collecting dust off on the side.
No, there's definitely been times like right near I'm talking about main feeds. Like, I'll still use barrels, like sending off to a monitor or, sending things off that are display stuff. It's just that it's the main feed. I just want it to be plugged into the thing that needs to go to. And so I was superstitious, and then that made me crazy superstitious. Yeah, Chris is talking about turnarounds. I have lots of turnarounds too. Basically, in your crikey kit, you just end up with all the little bits that you need that are going to pull everything back together. And even if you never want to use them, you want to have them. It's always a thing. Chris, you were going to say something, Chris Summers?
Yeah, sorry to go back a little bit to Leland and NDI. I was playing around with NDI last night, and it's pretty cool. Unfortunately, I don't have Lightning to Ethernet. It was doing pretty well over Wi-Fi, and I tried to hack it together. On the Mac, you can share your internet connection over Lightning. So I tried to do that, thinking I could get an IP address switched onto Ethernet. It doesn't work, unfortunately. You have to. So my question was, how is a switcher the only way to pipe it into Zoom? I know, Leland, you're on Windows, if I remember correctly. How can you do it on Mac? Any advice, anyone?
I'm going to leave that to John, because I'm all PC here. But if you get the NDI toolkit, you have there's two apps there. There's the tools itself, which is the virtual app to grab the video. And then there's the NDI scan converter, which is another that can control audio as well. So what I'm doing is I'm using a virtual cable to get the sound back and forth. So I'm running separate on that for the audio. It's the video that I'm sharing out and using the NDI connection, but I actually have it coming out of the box into an H.264 encoder that takes my HDMI signal out of a Blackmagic Monitor Mini. It's taking it through that into the encoder and then into the network. And then I just go look for it. It's always there, so I just have to go find it.
Another
Normally,
easy
I
way to
just
do
select
it
whatever
is
source
with
I need.
OBS Project has an NDI open source plugin that it doesn't have anything to do with OBS. It's just it's the easiest place I know to get to that that specific what's it called, the open source resource.
Awesome, thanks guys.
Nate Krause says a couple shows ago you were talking about your green screen setup, and you mentioned keying differences between different tiers of ATEM switchers. What was the difference you noticed, and which models had the better keyer? The only two models that have the better keyer is the 4ME and the Constellation, and they have basically a subset of the Ultimat, which is the 4ME is what I'm using for. So for those of you who are here, what you're looking at is green, and there's the background. So so anyway, but yeah, for some people who everyone on the panel has already seen that, but it's but the people who are new, this is what we're talking about, is how to do that. And so the fact that it's a linear keyer does a couple things for me. One is I'm able to use what I call a dirty key, which is that I'm doing a raw mat, and I'm not. You'll see how this is a horrible green. This shouldn't work. But because I'm not trying to make it perfectly clean, and I'm allowing this dark area to be dark, and these areas here, they just kind of they get neutralized and then just get pushed over the image, and no one notices. And so by doing that, I'm regaining a lot of hair detail. And when you have as little hair as I have, you have to you have to do that. Sorry, and make sure to mute yourself. And Shannon, make sure that if we see someone or Chris, just make sure we're muting people who are coming in there. So
yeah, you and I just double punched.
Leland. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That
anyway,
was me.
so
Sorry, guys. I apologize.
So the other ones are chroma key, and chroma key is just a very primitive key, and it's what's in most switchers. You have to have a really good key, and you're never going to get the kind of detail you're going to get from a linear key. So that's just, a chroma key is never going to give you what you can get from a linear key. There's very little excuse for any switcher to not have a linear key built in and have it relatively easy and simple, because from a pixel math perspective, it is very simple. You are averaging the red and the blue channels, and then you're subtracting it from the green channel. That's all I need, with a couple little sliders to affect contrast. And you have a linear keyer that we were able to calculate on a laptop in 2008 at HD uncompressed. We can definitely do it now. And so for anybody to not have that kind of access is silly. This chroma key thing is just a distraction for most of these switchers to not have that thing. And now I think that eventually what we'll see is the newer switchers. Now the little ATEM minis, I mean, that it is more computationally inexpensive to do the chroma keys. So I think that the little ones, the sub $1,000 ones, I can see staying with that. But I hope that in the larger switchers coming out of ATEM, and basically all the software switchers, I don't understand, why they're not doing that. Now I will say that the Memo Live has a linear keyer, but the controls are so convoluted, even I can't figure it out. And I used to develop green screen plugins. So that should be considered a problem. It's someone, I kind of feel like in that case, it's just that it's just over-engineered. And what I'm doing here is almost no sliders. It is literally like, just give me the raw key. I just touched on it a little bit and that's it, and so that's what we need. And getting good keys is not difficult. So especially when you don't need it to be perfectly clean, which most of the time when we're doing a lot of this stuff, especially for what we're doing here, we don't need a perfectly transparent key, and you can get away with a lot. So one of the things that Diane Bowser asks, he said, Jason just brought up a great point. Footage review hours cost money. How do you communicate these costs to the client? Line item. Like I have a line item that says this is how much, you have a line item that just says this is the storage cost, and this is the record cost.
Order off the menu.
But anything that you want to keep track of it. Now, whether you expose that to the client or not, I tend not to be a big line item quoter. I tend to just give people a number, like here's the number that this is going to cost. And but when we calculate that number, we calculate storage, we calculate records, we calculate all this, all that stuff is all part of the calculation there. And if they ask for it, then that's what, but it's definitely calculated into it. And I learned a lot of that process from when I was at ILM. You didn't think about charging for CPU hours, but ILM did. So they figured out that they charge you for every CPU hour that's being used to render those frames. And a lot of visual effects farms didn't do that back then. 25 years ago, no one was charging for render time. And ILM would very meticulously keep track of it. We had one shot that was like $750,000 in render time, and so it's, you get into these because what's happening is distributing it over lots and lots of processors. But the thing is that what was important there is, it seems crazy, but by doing that, the render farm always was well set up. It's a profit center. It's an income center, and because of that, you can keep on investing in it. And so you have this great render farm because it's paying for itself. And so in the same way with storage, by having a line item that doesn't look that big, but it's both something that's pushed onto the client, and the client's not going to say no to the storage, and it also means that you have in your accounting, when you're dealing with your CFO, you have a line item that says, yeah, I know that cost us money to do that, but this is the money we made, with that item. So I think that's an important piece of how you do that. But you definitely communicate it like that. And if they don't want the storage, then you go, okay, we won't record the show. It's like there's you got to pay, or you can give us a drive and we'll see how that turns out. You can send someone over with a recorder and they can plug into our thing. That's fine too, but generally, for a couple $100 out of a big show, no one's going to talk about
I was doing a small show. I was doing a small show years ago, and a producer questioned why I had a line item for a tape op. And I said, well, he manages the record. He goes, how hard is it to reach over and hit play and record? And I said, well, let me ask you this. Do you really want to record the show, or would it be kind of nice if it was recorded?
Right. Well, and that's the whole thing. I think people don't realize that, all of those things that when we talk about the straw that killed the camel's back or broke the camel's back and all these things is that in production, there are many things that aren't, not one of them is complicated, but trying to do all of them is complicated. And especially in a live event, you can imagine people ask, we try to make sure that we're totally set up 2 hours before. Like we're just staring at our screens 2 hours before. That's not because that's what's going to happen. That's our goal, because what we know is that the client's then going to show up and they're going to have all kinds of requests and they want to do a bunch of other things and they're not ready for something. And we want to be flat and ready to be with them and do whatever we need to do so that 30 minutes, hopefully 20 or 30 minutes before the show, we're now staring at our screens. And so that's the goal, is to make sure that we are ready so that we can be then ready to respond and be appropriate with what's going on. And what happens is you don't get all those last minute requests, then you forget to hit record, and then a lot of times when you have extra hands, they look, the other thing is that you're compartmentalizing failure. And as you have more people and more equipment, what you do is that equipment goes bad or something goes wrong over here, and a person who's multitasking, when something goes wrong with one piece, all the things they're multitasking can fail. Whereas when someone's got one specific thing that they're focused on, or a handful of things that, one really important thing and a couple ancillary things is okay. 2 or 3 really important things on one person, dangerous. For a certain scale. Now, Doug asks, and by the way, Colin, the education is starting in 8 minutes. Doug asked what keyer is in the ATEM Mini Pro, and I believe that the keyer in the ATEM Mini Pro is a chroma keyer.
It is, with one exception. The 4K version has a slightly better one, and it does have a linear.
No. Well, I'm talking about the minis. The minis are not.
Oh, the minis. Oh,
yeah, the minis
right.
are chroma key. No, the 4ME and the Constellation both have the linear keys in them, and in the upstream, it's in the upstream keyers. I don't think it's in the downstream keyer. I think the downstream keyer is still what it is. So I believe that is the case. Now I have a question for all of you to think about. This is a little different. I'm going to throw something at you rather than because I'm trying to figure this out. So I have a partner who has. We want to translate, and people don't start trying to guess what this is, but I'm just trying to figure this out. We want to translate, let's say, 16 languages. So I have one source, that is the program source, and we have to do this all at home. It used to be that the translators were all in one place. Now they can't be all in one place because of what we're going through. So I have one audio source. I don't need to be video. One audio source that needs to be distributed to 16 people. And Leland, somehow you keep on ending up unmuted. I don't know if you have some kind of auto key or something on that, but it's not working. So we have one audio source, and then we want to go out to 16 people, and we want them to return that audio source. I mean, that just their translation of the audio source. We don't need to get it back from them. We have to send them the core. They then translate it, interpret it. So they're talking, and all those feeds have to come back to us. And my goal is to try to get all those feeds back as individual feeds and on one computer, not on 16 different computers.
Is it live?
It's live. And so the post is easy. Trying to figure this out live. And then what I want to do is push it into Dante out of the computer using the virtual sound card. And so I want to push that
machines?
into a 201.
VM machines? Can you run 16 instances of a VM machine on a big enough machine?
We probably could. I'd really love to not have it be, yes, virtual machines could, I could possibly have a big beefy machine and put 16 in, and it's not, the question is maybe that's the solution. I just feel like there's got to be a software solution that doesn't require 16 virtual machines, because now we're talking about also 16 virtual cards. It becomes like this thing that you're kind of grabbing onto. And we don't have to solve this in the next 5 minutes.
Is the challenge the convergence, or I assume the distribution is easy? The challenge is getting everything all into one computer that's not horribly off, right?
Well, it doesn't matter if it's horribly. I mean, it can be a couple seconds off. I mean, because there's human latency in the fact that they're hearing something and they're talking. The latency for the audio to talk to them, let's say over Skype, is only a 300 millisecond round trip, but the human latency is going to be a 3 seconds or 4 seconds. I mean, that's going to be normal. But the point is that then it goes back into the QL1. It then gets re-embedded into one SDI that has all 16 channels, and then that's streamed, right? And so but we're trying to figure out is how to take that first piece where I send an audio out to them, and I get back from them a whole bunch of channels. We're not trying to solve it in the next 5 minutes. I'm trying
Might
to.
be barrel connectors. I think there's going to have.
There is not.
I've got a solution that I think would work pretty well if you.
Yes. Go for it.
So it is using SRT, so it is using something that's capable of video, but SRT mini server, and you can do 16 feeds, so it hits your number. It does cross feeds, so your primary can get cross-fed to everyone else. It can take an NDI input or a physical input, and then it can, it generates an individual NDI feed per return feed. So there's a little bit to do to get that NDI back into Dante, and that's something that I have to think about. But
yeah, let's think about that, because what I'm trying to do is keep it light, because we also have a lot of bandwidth. We're bandwidth constrained, and so I'm trying to keep it light, but
with SRT you don't have to transmit the video.
Oh, right. So you can turn that off.
Yeah, you could just do 128 audio.
Okay.
I was going to say a private RTMP would do the same thing, and you would just throw whatever you want in the video stream.
Yeah, the great thing about I think it's Garnian about his SRT solution is that there's a client app that you can run on the individual machines that subscribe, and then it gets a return feed and does the send feed, so it handles almost everything you're wanting to handle on the client side. And then on the server side, it does that cross feed function, which makes it really simple. You basically select your main feed as your cross feed.
There's a lot of options coming in through chat too, Alex.
Yeah, I copied some of them. So let's keep this. We're going to keep this conversation, because the next step is trying to figure out how to actually instance one. Like let's do something where we get a bunch of people and we send it out, we get it back. That's the thing that we're trying to figure out and try to solve. So just something to think about. It's kind of I was like, there's got to be my goal is to make it elegant. Well, my first goal is to do it, and my second goal is to try to make an elegant version of it that doesn't turn into a lot of conversions in process and everything else. So, well, whoops, someone's breaking up there. Oh, Grant, go ahead. Go ahead, Grant.
I assume that the English is the original language. Is that right?
We'll say yes.
Okay. So, do you then do ducking so that original audio is in there, and then
we can remix it. The hard part, getting the ducking working, and we can talk. There's a whole conversation about that can be had, because there's duck, and then there's cross duck, and then there's overlay, and then there's a whole bunch of different ways. Once we get that audio back, there's a whole bunch of different ways that we can kind of sort that out. And that's a whole line of discussion about how we deal with interpretation in that process. It's probably a vertical, Shannon, that we can put in, is dealing with interpreters, because I think that there's a lot we can discuss there.
What's cross duck? Never heard of
Well,
that.
if you have two people, let's say you have someone who's speaking in Hindi and someone who's speaking in English, and you're trying to produce one feed that serves both people, so what you want to hear is when the person's speaking in English, you want to hear the Hindi underneath it. When the person's speaking in Hindi, you want the English underneath it. And so you build this kind of cross system that puts both of them in, so that you can have a single feed that has both. And then usually what you do is you provide another feed that's only English and another feed that's only Hindi, and you send all of them up and let the broadcasters pick which one they want. So but if you're doing a global stream, figuring that process out, and it's just a light touch it takes a very light touch on the process to make that work. Now, Chris, can you go
Are
ahead
you
and
working
kill
with the web accessibility
Okay,
initiative
hold on.
on that, Alex, at all?
We're not.
Have you ever talked with them? The W3C, it's a combination of the video LAN players and all that have gotten together.
We'll keep that discussion. Chris,
Yeah,
can you bring down the live?
Take it offline.
Take it offline.
Bye, everybody. We're going.